Support for this podcast comes from Visit California. How do you like to play when you travel? Maybe it's hiking through ancient redwoods, letting your creative side loose in a big city, savoring an unforgettable meal in wine country, or perhaps it is all of the above. Whatever way you love to play, you can find it in California. Find your ultimate playground at visitcalifornia.com.
The world moves fast. Your workday, even faster. Pitching products, drafting reports, analyzing data. Microsoft 365 Copilot is your AI assistant for work. Built into Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and other Microsoft 365 apps you use. Helping you quickly write, analyze, create, and summarize. So you can cut through clutter and clear a path to your best work. Learn more at Microsoft.com/M365 Copilot.
In Monterey, we see acorns at some point during the year, like all over the floor. Now, people who have dined at the Chieftess table look at it a different way because they're like, wow, that is actually a food source, not only for animals, but it was a huge staple for the natives, and it's now coming back again.
I'm Esalen Green, and this is a very special episode of Unpacked by Afar, because this week we hosted Unpacked Live, you guessed it, live version of the podcast in partnership with Visit California. We were there to celebrate California's diverse Native American communities. And that voice you just heard belongs to Christina Lone Wolf Martinez, one of our panelists. Christina is a private chef based in Monterey who runs a company called Chieftess Monterey Bay that offers pop-up dinners and other events highlighting ingredients that are indigenous to this part of California's coast, from salmon and seaweed to acorn flour. Christina joined me on stage in Boston to share her early food roots, what she learned from her Mexican grandmother, and how she came to understand and more deeply connect with her native roots. And in this episode, we go deeper into her early life, her efforts to re-Americanize American food as indigenous, and what it's really like to forage for and make your own acorn flour. Christina, welcome to Unpacked. It's so lovely to see you again. Would you mind by just introducing yourself, saying who you are, what you do, and where you live?
Yes, so my name is Christina Lone Wolf Martinez. I live in Monterey County, specifically Salinas Valley, born and raised here, and I am an Indigenous private chef to the area. So worked as a line cook all up and down Monterey coast. I ended up creating a family, taking a little bit of a pause, and then, kind of deciding as a mother, do I try to jump back into being a chef again? Do I do what I love to do and take my son on this adventure as well and, just show him that anything's possible? So I said, yeah. And we're now figuring out how to do events, do private dinners, ceremonial dinners, and still be primary parent at the same time.
I love that. Would you say that he's an adventurous eater?
His dad and I started him off really strong on it. So my son's father is also a chef.
Oh, amazing.
So
lucky
we both,
kid.
Yeah. We had talked about it when I was pregnant and like, what is he going to be picky because we're both so adventurous with food? Is he going to go, complete opposite? But Mateo actually eats really well and he's really interested in trying new things. He's had his first raw oyster. He's had shrimp, squid, ceviche. I do venison meatballs for him with fried quail eggs sometimes too, and he absolutely loves it. So I think the more normal he sees us eating it, he's like, okay, this is something we predominantly eat. This is our diet. And he's been taking to it really well, So there's been a few times where it's, he's like, I don't want to eat this. But he tries.
That's really cool. Well, I'd love to go back to your history. Like, how did you first fall in love with food?
Oh, man. I think that started as a 10-year-old. Both my parents worked full time. It was myself, my older sister, Daniela, and my little sister, Sophia. We would go hang out with my grandmother, my father's mother, and she lived on the east side of Salinas, and she had this awesome house with a huge backyard, but very different than what you would normally expect to see your American household have. So her backyard looked like a rancho in Mexico. So there was like cactus growing in the corner over here. She had a chicken coop over here. And then the neighbors next door were growing like jalapenos, corn, tomatoes, and they would trade. So she'd give them eggs and they'd give her fresh produce. And seeing our household and how different we lived, you know, we went to the grocery store to go buy things. So when I would go over to my grandmother's house, she would grab a basket, go outside, cut the prickly pears, and then, you know, dress them in the kitchen with salt and lemon. And we would just eat them off the plate like that. And I was just so amazed by the drastic difference, like the connection that she had with food, you know. So being observant of that as a young child, I was like, wow, this is something completely different. And then just the aroma was so different too. I mean, I would watch her make tortillas on the stove, and she would do it like it was absolutely nothing, like sticking her hand on that hot comal, like it was cold. And you know, beans bubbling over here and you smell them. And then as soon as she opened that lid to the rice, you're just like, oh my God, okay. I get it. I totally get it. And she would just watch her, observe her cooking. So
she clocked that you were into it.
She knew that I was super into it.
So how did you wind up entering the fine dining world as a chef? And how are you combining that fine dining education with this kind of focus on Indigenous ingredients?
Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't start off in fine dining. I started off as a Denny's waitress, and then it moved to like up the chain from there. And I ended up landing a server bartender job at Pebble Beach. And they had sort of like an open kitchen concept. So we had like this beautiful brick oven, like this fire brick oven, and they would do pizzas, but like sides along with that. So like duck fat marble potatoes and crispy Brussels sprouts with bacon and beets with like a horseradish creme fraiche sauce. It was right next to the bar. So I'm just like looking at all this food while I'm making these drinks, like, oh my God. Having that be an opportunity to also try different ingredients. Because at Pebble Beach, you know, you get the opportunity to try foie. You get the opportunity to try delicious oysters because you're in the industry and sometimes there's little snacks left over. So I was very lucky to be able to try these things at these very upscale restaurants and think in my own mind, like, how would I be able to interpret this into something familiar in my own culture? And then asking questions in the back of the house, like the duck confit, how does that work? How does that process go? What are you rubbing on the duck, the ingredients that you're using? It's a sugar rub with herbs, and they, you know, days off, I would cook for myself and my boyfriend. And
fun.
Oh yeah, loved it. Any chance I could, that's what I was doing. The girl who was running the pizza oven, she finally one day had like had it with me and was like, Christina, you really just need to like start working in the kitchen. She's like, I'm really tired of your questions. I think you just need to start working in the kitchen. And I looked at her and I'm like, well, who's going to take me with no experience back of the house? As soon as they see my resume, they're like, oh, server bartender all day. Like, what are you thinking? You get paid less in the kitchen than you do as a bartender. Do you really want to give that up? So I had to make that decision, you know, do I follow my passion and make it work, or do I continue serving and bartending and living pretty comfortably with a little extra savings? So asking her that, she's like, you know what? My boyfriend is actually the executive chef at Post Ranch right now, and he's looking for a chef apprentice, but he's looking for somebody with no experience whatsoever. He did not want anybody from culinary school. And I asked her this, I'm like, why would he want somebody like that? And she's like, because you are there for the passion, the commitment, and then he can mold you into something specific. Because going to culinary school, you're learning the basics of things, but you're taught that this is the only way and this is it. It almost cuts off your creativity a little bit because you're so in line, like, oh, this is how the French do it and this is how it has to be done. And he was very out of the box. So he used a lot of different crazy ingredients and, you know, I don't want to say Willy Wonka, but he had that kind of, that charm to him where I'm like, oh my God, this guy is thinking of certain things that I would never dream of or think of. And it takes a lot of courage to do things like that. So I got a hold of him. we started talking about it. I had dinner at Post Ranch. I did a stage where you kind of work a little bit in the back of the house and get the feel for service and the communication. And I was in love with it. I absolutely loved it and was like, I want to do this. And he's like, okay, it's $13.50 an hour. You have to drive all the way from Salinas to Post Ranch every day, 5 days a week. And I was committed. I was like, okay, done deal. Let's do it. And I left serving and bartending behind and really immersed myself in what they were doing at Post Ranch. They were doing some really incredible stuff at that time. And I felt really lucky to be there with the certain chefs that were there. There was Elizabeth Murray, who was our chef to Cuisine there, Quinn Thompson, who was the sous chef, and of course, John Cox, who was the executive chef at Sierra Mar at Post Ranch. And this team of people were just absolutely incredible. Just learning techniques from them, having to keep up with everybody who has experience in the kitchen or did go to culinary school. I'm just like, oh God, what did I really get myself into? But it was incredible.
Many moments that were both, I'm sure, hard and wonderful, but is there one that really sticks with you, about either how you learned to think about ingredients and how that inspired what you're doing now, or even just loving what you're doing despite the difficulty?
During that time, John had his chef's tasting menu, which I thought was absolutely incredible. On my station, I was responsible for 4 of those dishes on the tasting menu. They were things that were really true to Big Sur. We did like a seaweed bread that we would curl, and you could see like these beautiful long strands of seaweed in this rye bread. And it was like a smoked mussel puree with pickled sea grapes, and it sat on this beautiful rock. And it was like the ocean brought to you. And thinking along those lines, like the terrain, the sea, and the abundance that is around Big Sur, that made me look a little bit deeper. That's where my foraging started to come into play, because we were foraging for mushrooms even on the property. Like there was chanterelles everywhere. You would be lucky and find a couple morels if you knew the spots, and porcini mushrooms. So I'm like, oh my God, you can go to the point where my grandmother permacultured her backyard to what she specifically loves. And then you can go wild and find these things that are seasonal and so true and non-genetically modified. Like these are it. Being able to taste these ingredients in their true essence. So like the sea grapes, I absolutely loved because they carried little pockets of seawater in them. And as soon as you bit into them, you'd get like this beautiful, briny, bright taste to it. And then the fried sardine we had on top of it, or the smoked mussel. I mean, it was incredible to recognize all of these things. Even as a kid growing up, we'd go to the beach and I'd see that seaweed there, or sardines have such a huge history with the Monterey Bay area. And then finding people who like forage for these sea grapes in the water, I was just in awe. It like sparked another light in me, like when I was 10 years old, watching my grandmother make, rice, beans, and fresh tortillas. But this was on a whole separate level. And to see him honoring a lot of like the indigenous ingredients. And that was my first place also seeing acorn flour. He had actually found a lady in Martinez, California, who was processing acorns and turning it into flour. And he would buy it from her, and we'd use it at Post Ranch for our caviar setup. So they were acorn blinis, these cute little pancakes. That stuck true to me because that's a huge part of my cooking now, is using acorns. I now like harvest and process my own, which is, it's not an easy thing to do, but I love it. So think of like when you're doing tamales and you need that whole group of people to kind of help with that assembly line. Acorn processing is like that exact same thing. So just those little hints of detail that he had and that I was exposed to, I think really made me the chef that I am today.
Your business name now is Chieftess, Monterey Bay. So tell me how you're bringing all of these aspects of your life, your ancestors, these various cultures you were raised within, to the table, quite literally.
I think it was a concept I had to really think about. I really wanted to know the purpose. cooking throughout all of these different restaurants through Sierra Mar, through Stokes Adobe, through Cello Restaurant, you get to experience a lot of different things and a lot of different ingredients. But I was like, what's true to me? What's true to myself? What can I bring that's something a little bit different to the table? And during COVID, everybody had time to kind of just stay home. I took that opportunity to really dive into my roots and find out my lineage. I'm about 5'9", 5'10", and my parents just always said, "Oh, we're Mexican." And I'm like, there's absolutely no way. I'm way too tall to just be Mexican. Like, there's more to the story. So finding my doing my genealogy and finding out my heritage that way, and noticing that 55% of my genetic makeup was Indigenous, and then down the line was Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, and a little bit of Irish. There's one huge one that made sense. I'm like, okay, we're Indigenous. That makes a lot more sense than just Mexican. And then looking during COVID too, like, wow, there's not a lot of Indigenous food anywhere. Like, not until like these recent couple of years have we had, Sean Sherman from Sioux. We have Crystal, who's down in Oakland, who's doing amazing food. And then another chef from Salinas as well too, Sewa, who's now in Arizona. There's just a handful of us doing this. It was amazing to me that I could have the potential to be a part of that, to make an impact of that, especially where I live. So being born and raised in the Monterey Bay area, and how much history there is here about the natives, but it's not really a part of the tourist attraction. A lot of it is, the aquarium, the coastline, a lot of Italian food, a lot of Portuguese past and Japanese, but really nothing that from the origins, from the people. So I decided to kind of do a little more homework on that and found out about the Esalen tribe that's here in Big Sur and being connected with them. Finding a couple of the members and telling them, like, I know we're both native. I'm not of Esalen tribe, but I'm a chef here in the area, and I really want to pay respect and homage to the very beginning of it. And they kind of were taken aback a little bit and were like, wait a minute, you're trying to do what now? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, wait, hold on. Let me tell you, it gets better. Developing a connection with the Esalen tribe and being able to really highlight ingredients that were staples in their diet for their ancestors. Since doing this, a lot of people have been interested in finding out more about the native culture in this area. Like, where are some of the spots that they would, hunt and gather, or where they would process these acorns or anything like that. So, being connected with them and being invited onto tribal lands, and then seeing certain spots where they would hold ceremony or they would bury their loved ones. And then where they process their acorns, it's like these huge rocks that look like giant mocajetes. There's like a hole in the middle of it, and those are where the grinding stones. So to see where their villages were and how they processed it, I mean, it made sense to me that this needs to be important, especially in our area. Like, Indigenous food needs a seat at the table.
So how does that play out? Like, what are you making and how do people respond?
So re-Americanizing American food is kind of how I call it. So taking American classics, think like a burger. Bison burger, we're using miner's lettuce, and then the bun is acorn flour. Then like an elderberry aioli or something along those lines. So it looks very familiar. It's a burger, but you're using Indigenous ingredients to make it happen. And that excites people because it's like, oh my God, it's a burger, but it's something completely different. Or pasta. I've used the acorns for pasta and then did a bison bolognese on it. So honoring both parts of my lineage and then the origin of where I live itself. So trying to intertwine all three. I feel like the Chieftess table, there's a seat for everybody at that table. And then it's healing cultural colonization. It's healing a lot of things, a lot of pain, ancestral pain and past through food. So bringing the Italian and the native together, tomatoes are an Indigenous ingredient to the Americas, but yet it's a heavy part of the Italian culture. Chocolate is the same thing. Chocolate is very heavy in Europe and used everywhere, but those origins belong to Mexico. Vanilla, chilies, everything. Because a lot of people think indigenous food, okay, they ate venison over the fire and some berries. So being able to put, the culinary spin on it and be able to present something absolutely beautiful at the same time is just amazing for me to do.
Yeah. So going back to the foraging and the seasonality, it sounds like you've built these relationships with the Esalen tribe. And as I understand it, you're able to forage on some of their lands. So how did you expand into this foraging and how has that grown?
Yeah, I think as far as the foraging side in this area, I still am learning a lot. Like Jana Nason, she's one of the tribal members. We've gone out and collected acorns. She's shared her elderberries with me. And just getting a lot of the history from her and then the lay of the land, just being able to converse with them and tell them like, look, I'm going to turn this elderberry into elderberry caviar pearls and then putting them on top of oysters with smoked trout roe. But just learning as well, too, how to respect the foraging. Take only what you need and then leaving the rest. I've had such great support from the community. And then a lot of smaller tribes that aren't federally recognized, but are there, really just in awe of what I'm doing and the work that I'm putting into it to showcase Indigenous food. It's very humbling to be doing this. I think it just feels good that a lot of the Indigenous communities here are supporting what I'm doing. And thus, I want to support them as well, too. So anything that I forage from certain parts, and I'm talking about the food, I do always give that respect that this was foraged on tribal land from the Esalen, or this was foraged in Chumash territory, or this was foraged in the Amamatsan territory. So always giving that thanks, that respect, where it's needed and deserved. And then just putting my own Willy Wonka on it, I guess.
Well, I feel like the Big Sur Food and Wine Festival would be a great place to talk about that because you had a Chieftess table there and the menu looked amazing. It looked so good. Acorn flour was a big feature. How did that dinner go? How did you develop it? What was the reaction?
That was something super new for me. So this was my first year being invited to do Big Sur Food and Wine. And when I talked to Elsa, who's the food and wine director of Big Sur, she was just like, I really want to do something to honor the land that we're on and having this festival. Would you be interested in doing a dinner? And I was like, absolutely. And it ended up turning into this beautiful story of it being a female chef, all female psalms, and a female winemaker for the Chieftess table dinner. What did we call it? Unearthing our divine feminine. And how cooking is such a big part, not only for men, but for women too, and how healing that is, and the intention that you put into food. We can constantly replicate food, and at some point it just becomes almost robotic. But there's romance involved, there's connection, there's love. The stories I told behind each dish was very moving for people. The opening ceremony that we had before everybody sat down for dinner was very moving.
What did you do? What was the opening ceremony?
The opening ceremony was with one of the elders from the Esalen tribe. So Carrie kind of did a blessing beforehand, before everybody sat at the table. And then we called in our ancestors. I got to call in my ancestors from both sides of my lineage and just bring the spirits to the table, because we also had another table, like an ofrenda. So it was dedicated to the ancestors. And so each course, I set out a small plate for the ancestors with candles, and there was cempasúchil flowers everywhere, so they could sit and eat during the entire dinner as well. I had gotten emotional in the beginning of the ceremony calling out my ancestors because I was just overwhelmed with like joy and that oh shit moment where you're like, oh my God, like a year ago I had a baby and now I'm doing Big Sur Food and Wine, and I'm a private chef. I don't have a brick and mortar to, do all this, but I'm here. I'm in this moment. This was something I had dreamed of, and now I'm doing it. I put my whole heart out there for this dinner. It was an amazing experience, and being able to tell each dish and what they meant. For instance, the amuse that I made was called the Salmon People. And for that one, the story goes that the salmon gave its life for human and animal to sustain themselves. So it only made sense to me to start with the salmon first. And I kind of took a little bit of what I had learned at Post Ranch, and I sat the salmon. It was dulse seaweed chips that Monterey Bay Seaweeds they're making, and they're an incredible company. They're doing some really great regenerative stuff and really taking care of our oceans. But it was the seaweed chip with smoked salmon on top, pickled sea grapes, and then edible flakes of gold. It sat on a river rock, so as they sat at their table, that was the first thing they saw, was this rock with this beautiful little bite of food. And then just telling the story behind it, and then where everything was harvested from or foraged from. That was my story with that first bite of food. And then it went on from each course to there. So the sacred buffalo was a buffalo bison tartare that we served in a bone marrow with a quail yolk, and then a bunch of different little foraged items, sunflower shoots, calendula flowers, and it came with an acorn focaccia bread.
Oh, yum. What does acorn flour taste like? I don't think I've ever tasted it.
It does have its own like flavor profile, but the closest thing to it would be like a toasted chestnut, or think like really toasted almonds. It has like that really like nutty, buttery flavor to it. And it is gluten-free on its own, which is amazing. I think using those throughout the entire dinner was such a staple, especially because we were dining under redwood and oak trees. So it was outside.
Oh, lovely.
So being able to enjoy something that normally in Monterey, we see acorns at some point during the year, like all over the floor. Now people who have dined at the Chieftess table look at it a different way, because they're like, wow, that is actually a food source, not only for animals, but it was a huge staple for the natives. And it's now coming back again. I'm trying to bring it back a little bit.
Support for this podcast comes from Visit California. Everyone has their own idea of fun while on vacation. Your best friend is up at sunrise for paddleboard yoga. Maybe your kid wants to explore the wild mountain terrain. Your partner has their eye on a desert art installation. And you, well, you just want to relax by the pool, soaking up the afternoon sun. In California, the adventures are endless. From city to sea and mountain to desert, everyone can experience their own way to play. Start planning your trip to the ultimate playground at visitcalifornia.com.
Kaylee Cuoco and Sam Claflin star in the MGM Plus original series, Vanished. When the man Alice loves disappears on a train to the south of France, every romantic memory becomes evidence. Every intimate detail, a potential threat. She thought she knew everything about him, but she may not even know his real name. 4-part thriller Vanished premieres February 1st on MGM Plus. Finding the truth is a dangerous affair.
You mentioned that you don't have a public-facing restaurant at this point in time, but you do seem to do a lot of events where people can engage. How are you thinking about bringing your food to people outside of any kind of private chef work that you do?
I think my goal with it is just, of course, I would love a brick and mortar that people can come to. I have very special kind of ideas for that. It's not going to be just a normal place you walk up to. But doing these events for like the community and for like colleges, like this Friday, I'm doing a dinner at Cabrillo College and then one at UC Santa Cruz for the Native community. So Cabrillo College, it's for Indigenous Month, but we're doing like the Three Sister Garden, and then Rowan White, who's also another Indigenous person in the community doing some amazing stuff. She does seed saving.
So yes, yeah.
Regenerative seed saving, and how important it is to keep these heirloom seeds, or just in general, like getting ourselves back into planting things in our own ground if you have it. So we're going to be doing a collaborative kind of workshop together. So she's going to be showing people how to save seeds, certain seeds, what they're for, planting them in what season. And then I'll be bouncing off of that with the dinner. And then some of these seeds we're going to be using in it. So like we have pumpkin and squash right now. I'm going to do a pumpkin sage soup with acorn fry bread on the side, wild rice with a Three Sisters succotash and bison meatballs. So it's almost like a little native bowl. And then blue corn cookies that are coming from the blue corns coming from Fireline Farms here in Salinas, UC Santa Cruz. We're going to be doing the same thing. So it'll be a little bit of a cooking demo for me to show people some of these ingredients that I've foraged for and then letting them be able to taste them. You know, who doesn't love a little bit of education and then get to taste the education at the same point? So
Are you seeing more interest in that way? I mean, it sounds like it based on all of the different events, but do you feel like you've seen people engage more or engage differently?
Oh, 100%. I think people are now really starting to establish a relationship with food and being highly aware of the mass production of food that's been happening in America for a long time, and how a lot of the nutritional value from those foods have been stripped away or been genetically modified so it looks beautiful in the grocery store, and that's what we're going after, but yet it has none of the nutrients that it originally had from its wild state. So I think people are getting more and more interested in having apple trees or lemon trees or growing peas and their own pumpkins, especially for Halloween, and then actually knowing they can use them in different ways culinarily. So I think especially in our area, we're becoming more and more aware of it.
Well, just a few final questions. Wondering if there are any specific Indigenous experiences that you recommend travelers do in the area within Monterey or Big Sur?
Ooh. I think the Esalen tribe is really trying to make an impact in the community as far as like showing certain parts of Monterey where they are very sacred. So they are developing certain things like that, like an Esalen trail, if you will, throughout Monterey. So they were thinking of coming up with like a mapped guide to show people like, okay, this specific spot in Pacific Grove, this is where they would collect abalone and harvest them. Because if you ever walk that trail out in Pacific Grove off 17 Mile Drive, you could still see it today. There's just like tons of little shards of abalone shells everywhere. So you know that was certainly like a fishing place, or even the history from the buildings themselves. Like Chela Bakery, the adobes that they're in have been there for quite a long time, but the people who owned it at that time, their servants were natives from that area. So they were colonized, put in the missions, and then they became servants in the household. And that's something that isn't really highlighted, because sometimes history itself can be, I think we're like a little ashamed or a little afraid to bring up certain stories or certain things, but it means a lot to the history of Monterey and where we are. And you can see how the Spanish kind of arrived and brought in their culture along with ours. So I think things along that line, one of my favorite places to go is Point Lobos. And it has one of the last standing whaling cabins there where you can see like these huge cauldrons where they would boil down the fat, and there's still like whale bones. And then just going out there and seeing the area. So just going out there and just walking the trail. I mean, I've done the whole loop quite a few times. I think it's like 10 miles all the way around. It's something beautiful. So I'm looking forward to seeing the guided map from the Esalen tribes themselves, and then potentially opening their tribal lands. So they're building out a museum with all of their artifacts that they've found, and then doing a native garden on their property, and then just being able to tell their story themselves. I also love to take friends who have never gone for the first time to Esalen Institute. I used to work and live there on the property, and going to the hot springs there is amazing. It's just overlooking the ocean. It's like right off the cliff right there. So to sit in hot spring water in a bathtub and just stare out at the sea otters playing, or just kind of get lost in your thoughts, I think is wonderful.
Okay, well, very last question. If it's your day off, I imagine you don't have a ton of those. You have a friend in town for the first time. Where would you take them? What would you do? And what would you eat, of course?
Oh, man. Okay. I think if I have a day off and I don't have my son with me, we would, of course, start off at Alta Bakery, because the garden back there is absolutely beautiful and the food is fantastic and I cannot function without coffee. So it's like some of the best coffee and like matcha lattes I've ever had. So we would go there, and then I would do the trail towards the wharf, because I think that's just like such a nostalgic place to take people and see all of these restaurants and people like barking at each other with seafood, and you see the seagulls. I think it's super great. And then you hear the sea lions from over there too, and you're like, okay, I got to go check out these guys because they're calling me. And then I would definitely go to Ad Astra Bakery. Chef Ron Mendoza is doing some amazing pastries there, and his bread is super killer. He just opened a second bakery in Carmel Valley. He's worked at French Laundry, some really like legendary places, but the food speaks for itself. I have to like kind of calm myself down when I go in there, because it's almost like a kid in the candy store, because it's like, oh, you want
all the things.
Oh my gosh, all the things. So like salmon tartines, he's got these giant cinnamon rolls, and I'm just like, oh my God, it's my day off. Of course I want all of that.
Yeah, you should. You deserve it. You work hard.
Totally. But if we have the kids, I love taking them to Hacienda Hay and Feed. So my friend Niall, who owns that, is another brilliant, businessman. They have like little train rides for the kids. He has like this huge corn pit, like these dried corn for the kids to just go nuts in. And then he has like a little cafe coffee shop there too. So like if it's me and another mama friend, we're like, go to the corn pit, go have fun in there. We're going to have a coffee and just sit here and be able to like chat for a couple of seconds. I also love going to the river in Carmel Valley. That seems to be a very local spot during the summers too. You see a lot of the kids there, a lot of families go there, and everybody just brings like a huge picnic of food. And then we all just set up shop, let the kids play in the river. It's maybe like 2-3 feet high, so you don't have to worry too much about the kids just, floating down the river. But that's an epic spot that I love taking people to. And that's something a lot of tourists don't get to go to. It's almost like you got to know somebody to get there. And then Carmel Valley Creamery. I love taking friends there. Sophie is doing some incredible cheeses that I used for Big Sur Food and Wine. Like I used her fromage blanc and I mixed it with elderberry jam. And then I put like smoked duck on top of it. And then it sat on a blue corn bellini with wild honey and bee pollen. And then I used her fromage blanc again in the Indigenous ravioli. So we harvested Katie Rose rice, harvested black sage from Big Sur for me. And we added that to the filling with wild porcinis from my friend Jonathan in Pacific Grove. And then we sat a duck egg on the inside of it. And we encased it with the acorn pasta, brown butter sage, toasted pine nuts, more mushrooms. I mean, it was really great.
It's dinner time and my mouth is legitimately watering right now.
It was great. So taking people to Sophie and being able to taste these cheeses and then seeing them there too. Like, I mean, she's got like this little cave of like these beautiful wheels of cheese. And you're just like, you're doing this in Carmel Valley? Like, it's really fun to see that and then see that process. Who doesn't want to go cheese tasting? I think it's fantastic. And then just hit up a few more of the restaurants in the area that I love. So Stokes Adobe is one of my favorites. I also helped them open that restaurant a few years ago, but it's so beautiful. The decor inside of it. Matt, who is the lead bar manager there, is doing some really amazing drinks. Joshua Perry down the street from Cella, they're like literally 500 feet away from each other. They're doing some really great cocktails. So it's great to have them that close because you can just
a little bar crawl there.
Yeah, I mean, for the mommy day, yeah. So if it's mom's night out, that's perfect for us. And then downtown Monterey is literally right there too, and that's like pub crawl. You got to throw a couple of cocktails in there.
Is there one that you would get at one of those places, or do they change all the time?
They seem to change seasonally, but I'm going to say it on here because I want it to come back. Matt at Stokes Adobe had one called the Jade Cove. So there is a beach in Big Sur called Jade Cove where a lot of the locals will go down there, and you can actually like hunt and find jade stones.
Cool. Wow.
And it's a little dangerous because it's basically like this huge rope off the side of the cliff, and you shimmy yourself down it, and then you have to climb back up it. So
yes. Yeah, you have to have that strength to get back up.
Oh my God. And it's so funny to see because you'll see the locals going there, but then they'll tie like a 12-pack of beer and then like drag it down the bottom to their friends, because we're like, if we're here all day, we might as well. So he has a drink called the Jade Cove that is absolutely delicious. It's like that beautiful jade color to it. I think the base of it is vodka, but I was just like, oh, I'm hooked.
How do they get the color?
I didn't even ask them. I was just like, bring the next one.
Wow. Okay. I wanted to come back so I can try it too.
Yeah. And then Josh down the street at Cella is like magical with his drinks too. I mean, he's doing one with Fruit Loops cereal but it's like completely clear in the glass, and then he just sets one Fruit Loop on top of this big beautiful ice cube, and it's almost like that nostalgic play for us as adults, because especially at my age, like Fruit Loops was a big part of my childhood. So to like inadvertently turn that into a cocktail, I'm like, oh, okay, you got me. I gotta have one of these. Or he did one with like a strawberry Pop-Tart, and he like made mini strawberry Pop-Tarts and put them on the side of the glass. And I'm just like, who would go to such lengths to make something like that? Oh, Josh Perry would. So very fun to do those kinds of things. So I just, love them.
Well, sign me up for Christina's food crawl. I'm there.
I would love that. Let's do it. Absolutely.
Christina, thank you so much for all of your time tonight. It's so lovely to chat with you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much to Christina Lone Wolf Martinez and to our event partner, Visit California. To watch a live recording of the event, see our YouTube link in the show notes. In the show notes, we've included more about Christina, her events, and the ways that travelers can engage with Monterey's Indigenous history. And please check out our first Unpacked Live episode featuring Humboldt County river guide John Acuna, and our bonus episode featuring Angela C. Marcelino, a Massachusetts-based author and member of the Mashpee Wampanoag, who have lived in the state for more than 10,000 years, much longer than Massachusetts has actually been a state. Angela did our land acknowledgement and has a wonderful cookbook. We've included that link as well.